Long ago, on the edge of the world where the ocean met the stars, there stood a harbor unlike any other. Its name was Starfall Harbor, and every night stars fell into its waters. Not shooting stars, not meteors, actual stars, tiny glowing stars that drifted gently from the heavens and landed upon the waves like floating lanterns. The people of Starfall Harbor collected them in silver nets. They placed them in glass jars. They hung them from rooftops. They used them to light streets, warm homes, and guide ships safely through the dark. Because starlight possessed a special magic. It could illuminate more than darkness. It could illuminate truth. No lie could survive beneath pure starlight. No hidden thing could remain hidden. For centuries, the harbor prospered. Its people lived peacefully beneath the glow of fallen stars. Until the night the stars stopped falling. At first, nobody noticed. One night passed, then two, then three. The sky remained beautiful. The stars still shone overhead, but none fell. The fishermen became concerned. The sailors became nervous. The merchants began whispering. Because without fresh starlight, the old stars slowly faded. One by one, the jars around the harbor dimmed. The streets grew darker. The ships sailed less confidently. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. At the highest point of Starfall Harbor stood an ancient clock tower. Its clock face was larger than a house. Its golden hands had measured time for over 500 years. And, according to legend, the clock did far more than tell time. It regulated the falling stars. As long as the clock turned, the heavens remained balanced. As long as it ticked, stars continued falling into the sea. No one knew who built it. No one knew how it worked. Only one person maintained it, a young clockmaker named Cassian. Cassian was 19 years old, quiet, curious, always covered in oil and clock dust. His father had cared for the tower before him, and his grandfather before that. For generations, his family had guarded the great clock. Most people considered it an honor. Cassian considered it mostly ladders, far too many ladders. Every morning, he climbed hundreds of steps to inspect the mechanism. Every evening, he climbed them again. And every single time, he complained. Mostly to himself, because nobody was there. On the seventh day without falling stars, Cassian climbed the tower once more. The sky was gray. The sea was restless. Something felt wrong, not just in the harbor, in the tower itself. The clock sounded different. Its ticking had always been steady, comforting. Now it seemed slower, strained, almost tired. Cassian frowned. Then he reached the top and froze. The clock had stopped. The enormous golden hands stood perfectly still, neither moving nor ticking. Silence filled the tower, a silence that had not existed for 500 years. Cassian stared in disbelief. Impossible! The clock never stopped. Never! Then he noticed something even stranger.
A small silver door had appeared inside the mechanism, a door he had never seen before, a door that absolutely had not existed yesterday. Its surface was covered in stars, and at its center glowed a single keyhole. Attached to the handle was a note, old, yellowed, as though it had waited centuries to be read. Slowly, Cassian unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, ancient, and the message contained only one sentence. If the clock has stopped, the timekeeper is missing. Cassian stared, then read it again and again. The timekeeper! Who was the timekeeper? Before he could wonder further, the entire tower shook. The sea outside erupted. A massive wave crashed against the cliffs below, and from somewhere beyond the horizon, a bell rang. Not from Starfall Harbor, from somewhere impossibly far away, a bell that sounded as old as time itself. The silver door slowly creaked open. Beyond it lay not machinery, but a staircase descending into starlight. And at the bottom of that staircase, someone was waiting.
The silver door stood open, silent, waiting. Cassian stared at it for several long seconds. Then he looked behind him. The great mechanism of the clock tower remained frozen. The golden gears no longer turned. The ancient hands no longer moved. And outside the tower window, dark waves battered the cliffs below. The harbor needed answers. Unfortunately, answers seemed to live beyond the mysterious door. "Wonderful," Cassian muttered. "Nothing dangerous has ever hidden behind a magical staircase." The staircase glowed softly, as if mocking him. With a sigh, he stepped through. The door closed behind him. Instantly, the sounds of the tower vanished. The wind disappeared. The crashing sea disappeared. Even his own footsteps seemed strangely distant. Only starlight remained. The staircase spiraled downward endlessly, or perhaps upward. It was difficult to tell. The laws of direction appeared to have given up entirely. Stars drifted around him, tiny glowing lights floating through the darkness like silver fish swimming through an invisible ocean. The deeper he traveled, the stranger everything became. Ancient clocks floated in empty space. Some were enormous, large enough to hold entire villages. Others were no bigger than pocket watches. Yet every single one had stopped, their hands frozen, their pendulums still. Cassian felt a chill, because if the clock at Starfall Harbor had stopped, and these clocks had stopped, then something far larger was wrong, far larger than a single harbor. At last, the staircase ended. Cassian stepped onto a bridge made entirely of starlight, and forgot how to breathe. A city floated before him, a city suspended in the middle of the cosmos. Countless towers stretched to infinity. Giant clocks hung between them. Rivers of glowing sand flowed through the streets. Above everything rotated an enormous celestial machine, a machine so vast it resembled a galaxy made of gears. Golden wheels turned around silver rings. Thousands of stars moved through it, as if the entire universe were a clock, and this city sat at its center. A sign stood beside the bridge, written in shimmering silver letters. "Welcome to the Hourglass City.
keepers of time since the first dawn." Cassian blinked, then blinked again. The sign remained. Of course. A pause. Naturally. The universe apparently had a secret city responsible for time. Why not? The bridge led toward a grand gate, and standing before that gate was a girl, perhaps his age, maybe a little older.
She wore a dark blue coat covered in tiny embroidered stars. A silver hourglass hung around her neck, and she looked extremely annoyed. The moment she saw him, she crossed her arms. "You're late." Cassian stopped. "What?" "3 days late, actually." The girl sighed dramatically. "Honestly, the timekeeper disappears, the clocks stop, the stars stop falling, and somehow you're still late." Cassian stared. "I don't even know who you are." "Exactly." She looked even more annoyed. "I'm Mira." A pause. "Apprentice timekeeper." Cassian pointed at himself. "Cassian. Clockmaker. Late clockmaker. Could you stop saying late?" "No." Before he could argue further, Mira turned and began walking. "Come on." "Where?" "To meet the council." Cassian immediately disliked the sound of that. Every council he had ever heard of contained important people. Important people usually asked difficult questions and frequently blamed someone afterward. Still, he followed. The streets of Hourglass City were astonishing. People walked carrying glowing clocks. Others rode floating platforms made of crystal. Some appeared human, others did not. Cassian passed a man whose beard flowed backward through time, a woman whose shadow moved 10 seconds before she did, and a child who seemed to be aging and growing younger at the same time. He decided not to ask questions. There were too many. Eventually, they reached a circular hall. Massive silver doors opened, and Cassian entered. 12 figures sat around a glowing table. The Council of Time. Ancient faces, wise faces, worried faces, very worried faces. At the center of the table floated a map of the universe, and the map was breaking. Cracks spread across stars, constellations flickered, entire regions faded in and out of existence. Cassian's stomach dropped. One of the council members rose, an elderly woman with silver eyes. "The clockmaker has arrived." Cassian immediately wished he hadn't. The woman studied him, then spoke words that made no sense whatsoever. The timekeeper chose well. Cassian frowned. What timekeeper? Silence filled the chamber. The council exchanged glances. Finally, the woman answered. The first timekeeper. A strange feeling ran through Cassian. The one who built your harbor. His breath caught. That's impossible. The harbor was ancient, hundreds of years old. No one lived that long. The council members looked uncomfortable. Mira looked away. The silver-eyed woman sighed, then pointed toward the center of the hall. A new image appeared. A man, tall, elegant, wearing a long coat covered in stars. His eyes shone like galaxies, and somehow Cassian recognized him, not because he had met him, because he had seen him before, in paintings, in portraits hanging inside the clock tower. The founder of Starfall Harbor, the man who built the great clock,
the man who vanished 500 years ago, the legendary clockmaker known only as Aurelius. The silver-eyed woman spoke softly. He is the timekeeper. Cassian's heart pounded. Was. The council member shook her head. No. The map of the universe flickered again. A star vanished entirely, then another, and another. The woman looked directly into Cassian's eyes. He is still alive. Silence. Heavy. Impossible. Then came the worst part, the part that made every council member look frightened, because Aurelius wasn't merely missing. He had left behind a message delivered the very moment the clocks stopped. The council member placed a crystal on the table. The crystal lit up. Aurelius appeared, older, tired, afraid. And when he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall. If you're seeing this, the Eater of Hours has escaped. Every council member lowered their heads. Mira went pale. Cassian felt ice run through his veins. The image continued. Find me before the last star falls. The crystal shattered. The hall fell silent. And somewhere beyond the walls of Hourglass City, something enormous moved in the darkness between stars. Something that fed on time itself. Silence filled the council hall. Heavy. Uncomfortable. The crystal had shattered, but Aurelius' final words lingered in the air. Find me before the last star falls. Cassian stared at the empty space where the image had been, then looked around the room. Nobody seemed surprised. Nobody questioned whether the warning was real, which meant only one thing. Everyone already knew what the Eater of Hours was, and they were terrified of it. Cassian pointed toward the broken crystal. All right. A pause. What exactly is the Eater of Hours? No one answered immediately. The council exchanged uneasy glances. Even Mira looked uncomfortable, which was impressive. Until now, she had seemed incapable of discomfort. Finally, the silver-eyed councilwoman spoke. It is older than stars. The floating map flickered again. Another constellation vanished. It existed before time was measured. The room darkened. Images appeared above the table, ancient memories. An universe without clocks, without calendars, without seasons, without beginnings or endings, only endless chaos. Then came the first dawn, the birth of time itself. Stars ignited, worlds formed, rivers flowed, life began. And from the shadows between those first moments, something awakened. A creature. Hungry. The image shifted. Cassian saw an enormous silhouette moving through darkness, too large to comprehend, too vast to fully see. A shape made of night and emptiness. Two glowing eyes opened. The image trembled. Even the memory seemed afraid. The Eater of Hours. The councilwoman's voice lowered. It does not eat people. A pause. It eats what? Mira rubbed her forehead. Time. Cassian laughed nervously. Nobody joined him. His smile slowly disappeared. Oh, the councilwoman nodded. If it feeds upon a tree. The image showed a forest. Then suddenly the trees vanished. Not destroyed, erased, as though they had never existed. If it feeds upon a city, A city disappeared, its history unraveling, its people never born, its buildings never built. Nothing remained. Cassian felt cold, very cold. If it feeds upon a star, the map flickered. One distant star vanished, not exploded, simply gone. Every memory of it vanished with it. The horror of it finally settled upon him. The creature wasn't destroying things, it was removing them from existence, erasing their time, as though they had never happened. Then Mira stepped forward. And it's getting stronger. She pointed toward the map. Large portions of the cosmos had already darkened. Entire regions were disappearing. The stars of Starfall Harbor had stopped falling because the paths they traveled no longer existed. The clock tower had stopped because time itself was becoming unstable. And if the eater continued feeding, eventually there would be no stars left, no clocks, no future, no past, nothing. The councilwoman turned toward Cassian, which immediately worried him, because important people only looked at you like that when they wanted something, and usually that something was difficult. Cassian, here it comes. The Timekeeper chose you. There it is. He sighed. Why me? The answer came from behind him, not from the council, not from Mira, from the doorway. Everyone turned. A figure stood there, an old traveler, wrapped in a cloak stitched from fragments of starlight. His beard glowed faintly silver, and around his neck hung dozens of tiny clocks, each ticking at a different speed. The council immediately stood.
Even the silver-eyed woman, Cassian noticed. That seemed significant. The traveler smiled. Took me long enough. Mira groaned. Oh, no. You know him? Cassian asked. Unfortunately. The traveler placed a hand over his heart. I am wounded. Then he grinned. My name is Orion. A pause. Professional wanderer. Another pause. Occasional savior of reality. Mira rolled her eyes. He's impossible. Orion looked pleased. Thank you. The councilwoman sighed. Orion knew Aurelius. Cassian's attention snapped back immediately. You knew the Timekeeper? The old traveler nodded. For a very long time. Where is he? Orion's smile faded. The room grew quiet. Then he spoke 3 words. Words that made every council member pale. The end of time. The map above the table shifted. A distant region appeared, far beyond stars, far beyond galaxies, at the edge of existence itself. A place no one willingly visited. A place known as the Last Horizon. Cassian stared. That's a real place? Unfortunately. Orion pointed toward the map. Aurelius went there. Why? The old traveler's expression darkened. Because that's where the Eater is heading. The room became still. Mira stepped forward. If the Eater reaches the Last Horizon, her voice nearly failed. The end won't stay at the end anymore. Cassian frowned. What does that mean? Nobody answered immediately, because the answer was horrifying. Finally, Orion spoke. "It means tomorrow ends." Silence. "The day after ends." The stars above the city flickered. "Eventually." His eyes met Cassian's. "The future itself ends." A deep bell suddenly rang somewhere outside Hourglass City. Once, twice, 3 times. The council froze. Fear swept through the chamber. Mira turned toward the window. Her face went white. "No!" Cassian followed her gaze, and his heart nearly stopped. Beyond the city, one of the great celestial clocks had begun crumbling. Golden gears broke apart. Entire sections vanished. Not destroyed, erased, as though time itself had been eaten. And in the darkness beyond it, 2 enormous eyes opened, watching, waiting, hungry. The eater of hours had found Hourglass City. The celestial clock shattered. Golden gears the size of buildings broke apart in silence, dissolving into nothing as the darkness beyond Hourglass City advanced. The 2 enormous eyes remained fixed on the city, watching, hungry. The council hall erupted into motion. Alarm bells rang across the floating city. Keepers rushed through the streets carrying glowing clocks. Towers sealed their gates. Bridges of starlight collapsed behind fleeing crowds. Hourglass City was preparing for siege. Cassian stood frozen. His mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. The Eater of Hours was real. It was here, and it was erasing pieces of reality simply by approaching. Orion grabbed his arm. "We need to leave. Now." Mira was already gathering supplies from a nearby cabinet: maps, crystal compasses, small hourglasses filled with glowing silver sand. Her movements were quick and practiced, far too practiced. Cassian pointed toward the window. "Shouldn't we be helping them?" Mira didn't look up. "If the Eater reaches the city, everyone here dies, or worse." Orion nodded grimly. "Our only chance is finding Aurelius before it reaches the last horizon. If he has a plan, it's there." Another tremor shook the hall. Outside, more celestial clocks were failing. One tower simply disappeared, not exploded, not collapsed, gone, as though it had never existed. Cassian swallowed hard. "All right." He took a deep breath. "How do we get to the last horizon?" Orion smiled, not reassuringly. "That's the exciting part." Mira groaned. "Why are you like this?" "Because panic is exhausting." The chrono rail. They left through the rear of the council hall and descended into the lower levels of Hourglass City. Far below the shining towers lay a station carved from black stone. Ancient rails stretched into darkness. Beside them waited a train unlike anything Cassian had ever seen. Its body was made of silver metal. Its windows glowed with starlight. Instead of smoke, it released drifting sparks of time. A brass plate on its side read, "Final departure before the end of time." Cassian blinked. "That can't be a real schedule." Orion climbed aboard. "You'd be surprised." The train lurched forward. Outside the windows, Hourglass City receded into the distance. Then the world changed.
The rails left the city entirely. The chronorail began traveling through space itself. Stars streaked past. Galaxies rotated below them. Entire worlds appeared and vanished in moments. Cassian pressed his face against the window like a child. "This is impossible." "Correct. That's why it works," Mira said. The first truth. For a while, only the sound of the train filled the carriage. Then Cassian turned to Orion. "Why did Aurelius choose me?" Orion's expression softened. "Because he was running out of time." "That's not an answer." "No, it's the beginning of one." The old traveler removed one of the tiny clocks hanging around his neck. It ticked backward. Aurelius built the Starfall Harbor clock for a reason. He placed the clock in Cassian's hand. He wasn't just collecting falling stars. Cassian frowned. Then what was he doing? Orion met his eyes. He hid one. Silence. Cassian stared. What? Aurelius hid a star in the Starfall Harbor 500 years ago. Why would anyone do that? Because it wasn't an ordinary star. Orion's voice grew serious. It was the first star. Mira stopped what she was doing. "You're telling him now?" "We're heading to the end of time. It seems rude not to explain." Cassian looked between them. "What is the first star?" Neither answered immediately. Then Orion said quietly, "The first light that ever existed." The carriage grew colder. According to legend, when the universe was born, one star ignited before all others. Its light created time itself. As long as that star burns, the future continues. Cassian's pulse quickened. "And Aurelius hid it in my harbor?" Orion nodded. "To protect it from the Eater." The chronorails suddenly shuddered. The lights flickered. Outside the windows, space rippled like disturbed water. Mira's face hardened. "We're entering unstable time." Cassian looked out. At first, he saw only stars. Then he realized something was wrong. The stars were moving backward. A moon crumbled, then reformed. A comet flew in reverse. An entire nebula collapsed into a single point and exploded again. Reality itself was stuttering. "The Eater has already reached this region," Mira said quietly. "Time is breaking here." The train jolted violently. A crack appeared across one window. Through it, Cassian saw darkness moving alongside the train. Not empty space, something alive. A massive shadow sliding through the stars, far too large to comprehend. One glowing eye turned toward them. The chronorail screamed. Its wheels sparked with silver fire. Orion cursed under his breath. "It found us." Mira grabbed the controls. "Hold on!" The train accelerated. Stars blurred into streaks of light. The shadow followed. Closer, closer, closer. Then, ahead of them, the universe ended. Cassian saw it clearly. A vast edge where stars simply stopped. Beyond it lay only darkness. The end of time. And standing upon that impossible shore, waiting beside a broken clock taller than a mountain, stood Aurelius. The timekeeper had been found, but so had the Eater of Hours. And it was almost upon them. The chronorail burst from the broken timeline and screamed toward the last horizon. Behind it came the Eater of Hours, a living darkness vast enough to swallow constellations, a shadow older than memory, a hunger older than history. And waiting at the edge of existence stood Aurelius, the timekeeper, the founder of Starfall Harbor, the builder of the great clock, the guardian of the first star. For 500 years, Cassian had seen his face only in paintings. Now he stood before him, real, tired, ancient. The train stopped. The doors opened. Cassian, Mira, and Orion stepped onto the black shore of the last horizon. There was no ocean here, no sky, no stars, only darkness. And at the center of that darkness stood a colossal, broken clock. Its hands pointed to midnight. Its gears no longer moved. The final clock in existence. Aurelius looked up. For a moment, he simply stared at Cassian. Then he smiled. A small smile. Proud. "I hoped it would be you." Cassian blinked. "You know me?" Aurelius chuckled softly. "More than you know." Before Cassian could ask what that meant, the universe shook. The Eater arrived. Its enormous eyes opened in the darkness. Entire galaxies vanished around its edges. Time unraveled wherever it looked. Mira stepped backward. Orion's face became grim. Even Aurelius seemed troubled, which was deeply concerning because legends were not supposed to look worried. The Eater moved closer, and the last horizon trembled. The broken clock began cracking. Aurelius turned toward Cassian. "There isn't much time." Cassian almost laughed. Given the circumstances, it seemed a poor choice of words. The first star. The timekeeper extended a hand. "Do you know why I hid it?" Cassian shook his head. The timekeeper looked toward the approaching darkness. "The first star is not merely a star. It is a choice." The universe seemed to listen. The first star burns because every living thing chooses tomorrow. Mira stared. Orion lowered his head, as though hearing a truth he had long suspected. Aurelius continued. "The Eater grows stronger whenever hope dies." The darkness stirred. When people stop believing in tomorrow, the Eater's eyes brightened. It feeds. Cassian finally understood.
The creature wasn't merely consuming time, it was consuming possibility. Every future abandoned, every dream surrendered, every hope forgotten. That was its food, and now it had grown large enough to devour entire ages. The Eater advanced. The last horizon cracked beneath its weight. Reality itself screamed. Aurelius looked at Cassian. "The first star has chosen a new guardian." Cassian felt something warm inside his coat, the small, backward-ticking clock Orion had given him. It was glowing, brighter, 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 until a golden light burst from it. A star emerged, tiny, radiant, beautiful. The first star. Cassian could barely look at it. Its light felt alive. It felt like every sunrise, every beginning, every promise ever made. The Eater roared. For the first time, it sounded afraid. The darkness surged forward. Galaxies vanished. Stars disappeared. The last horizon shattered. And then the first star spoke. Not with words, with understanding. Cassian suddenly saw countless futures, millions, billions, children not yet born, stories not yet told, songs not yet sung, every tomorrow that could still exist, and all of them depended on one choice. Aurelius already knew. Mira knew.
Orion knew the first star could stop the Eater, but only by becoming part of time forever. No longer hidden, no longer protected, its light would spread across the universe, reigniting every dying clock, every fading star, every broken future. But its guardian would become part of that light forever. Cassian looked at Aurelius. "You knew." The timekeeper nodded. "Since the day I built the harbor." "Why didn't you do it?" Aurelius smiled sadly. "Because it wasn't my choice to make." The first star floated toward Cassian, waiting, trusting. The darkness advanced. Closer, closer, closer. The end of time stood only moments away.
Cassian thought of Starfall Harbor, the sea, the lighthouse, the old clock tower. He thought of every star that had ever fallen into the harbor waters, every child who had watched them, every future still waiting to happen. Then he smiled and reached for the star. The moment his fingers touched it, the universe exploded with light, not destruction, creation. Golden light raced across existence, through galaxies, through worlds, through centuries. Every clock began ticking again, every extinguished star reignited. Broken timelines healed, lost futures returned. The darkness recoiled. For the first time since the first dawn, the Eater of Hours faced something stronger than itself: hope. The creature let out one final roar, then began dissolving. Not destroyed, transformed. Its endless hunger fading, its loneliness fading, until only a single shadow remained. And then even that vanished into the light. Silence returned. Beautiful silence. The kind that follows a storm. The kind that allows a new day to begin. Slowly, stars appeared again. Thousands, millions, endless. The last horizon glowed, and beyond it, new tomorrows stretched farther than anyone could see. Aurelius smiled. Mira wiped away tears she pretended not to have. Orion looked suspiciously emotional for someone who denied having feelings. And above them all, a new star shone brighter than any other. A golden star. The star of tomorrow. The star that would never fall. Back in Starfall Harbor, the great clock began ticking once more. The people cheered, the streets filled with light. And that night, stars fell into the sea again, more beautiful than ever. As for Cassian, some say he became part of the first star. Some say he still walks the pathways between moments, protecting future ages from dangers yet unseen. And some sailors swear that on clear nights, when the harbor waters are perfectly calm, they can see a young clockmaker sitting atop the old tower, watching the stars, making sure tomorrow arrives, as it always should. Time is not measured by clocks. It is measured by possibilities, by dreams still waiting to be followed, by stories not yet finished, by people who choose to believe that tomorrow can be brighter than today. The stars continue to fall. The clocks continue to turn. And somewhere beyond the edge of the night, the first star still burns, keeping the future alive for everyone.